Do we live in a meaningless universe? Is that what science tells us? And if so, how are we to respond to this crisis of meaning? Humans need reasons. We need to know that there is some point going on. The universe, however, is silent. It does not speak, or if it does, it's in a language we do not understand. And that's from philosopher Todd May in his book, A Significant Life, Finding Meaning in a Silent Universe. The history of science is marked by a number of humanity decentering moments. The start of the scientific revolution saw Nicholas Copernicus displace humanity from the centre of the universe, showing that the Earth revolves around the sun, with the convincing illusion being, as you stand on Earth, it looks like the heavens, the stars, the planets move across the sky with us in a fixed location. That turned out not to be the case. The next illusion to be dispelled, the next big illusion, was the illusion of design in nature. Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace showed in the 1800s that organisms can evolve over time, generating vastly different species, radiating out into the endless forms most beautiful and wonderful that we see around us today. The displacement here was to show that humanity was one branch in a rich tree of life. We were on the ape branch. Then a number of changes occurred in the 20th century. Ultimately, we weren't just on the ape branch of the tree of life. We found out that all life was cellular in nature. That was a discovery made a little earlier. But we were starting to realise that all life was related, using the same machinery to operate: DNA, RNA, and protein. The realisation that we make in the 20th century is to know that humans and all living things are made up of the same matter, the same atoms as the rest of the physical universe. That is to say that we are the universe. Yes, we're a very complicated part of the universe, but we are the universe. So the illusion there is this illusion that we've somehow been dropped in here from somewhere else, placed here, and we observe the universe outside of us. The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. Carl Sagan from Cosmos. Now, in order to get a self-aware, reflective, intelligent species like Homo sapiens to start to investigate the nature of the reality that they are indeed part of, requires a number of circumstances to be in place, and to be in place for an extended period of time. Life has existed as an unbroken chain since the origin around 4 billion years ago. In terms of anything in the universe, life is one of the most persistent if we take it as a collective. So in order to get complex life, that came very late in the story. And in particular, Homo sapiens with the capacity for language, for rational investigation, and the development in general of consciousness, a sort of internal experience, an internal monologue, well, that is very recent indeed. And it brings us to the concept of historical contingency. If the dinosaurs weren't wiped out by a massive cosmological catastrophe, giving the space, the ecological space for mammals to take their places in separate niches, we would never have existed. Or if one of the snowball ice earths that have existed multiple times in our history was longer or even permanent, then of course none of this could have happened. The fact that we're asking these questions now is so highly dependent on chance circumstances. With the arrival of consciousness, one of the things that happens is humans start to project their properties onto the world around us. So one of the earliest forms of religion, it still exists today, but that is animism. It's to impart properties to inanimate objects like rocks that kind of imbue them with a soul or a consciousness or some sort of personhood. So this anthropomorphization of the world around us, now that makes a lot of sense. Being able to create narratives about the world around you would serve a survival advantage. Telling stories about different plants that may pose a threat, may be poisonous, venomous insects. You tell stories about these things, you imbue them with characteristics, in some way this can make you better able to survive in a complex environment. Cognitive scientist John Vervaeke therefore describes humans as meaning-making creatures rather than meaning-finding creatures. I wrote an article called The Illusion of Meaning, and I'll put a link in the description below, and it's free to access. And that was greatly inspired by the philosopher Todd May. Now, he was an advisor on the TV show The Good Place, and he wrote a fantastic book called A Significant Life, Finding Meaning in a Silent Universe. So what Todd May was doing here was taking the work of existentialist philosopher Albert Camus. Some people argue about whether he was existentialist or absurdist, but for our purposes, that's not important. So he was working with Camus' idea, the myth of Sisyphus. And Camus developed the idea of the absurd, which is that we are confronted with a meaningless universe, which is an affront to our sensibilities. We look for meaning, we look for God, and we do not find it. Each time we investigate the universe further with science, God is not to be found. Now that friction that's caused by that originates because we are meaning-making creatures. We have this expectation, it's because of our evolutionary history, that there should be answers to the questions that we have. A narrative behind not just the world around us, but the cosmos itself. A grand narrative, if you will. Now, there is one way to get that we're all familiar with, which is a belief in God. Now, Albert Camus described that as philosophical suicide. For him, that was essentially giving up. I can definitely see the benefits to a belief in God. It's a package deal. Not only does it give you a clear grand narrative to the universe, but there's a sense of community, a shared belief system that's cohesive in some ways, and of course it can be divisive as well. But it really does solve the problem of the absurd, that feeling of discontent that we have from going out into a universe that we don't even know why it's here in the first place. My argument in The Illusion of Meaning is the expectation or need for those answers, that there should be a narrative, is a byproduct of our evolution, an accidental byproduct of a certain level of cognitive capacity, and therefore I hope that in some way this would offer some comfort to those who feel it. It's actually a very old idea from Buddhism that life is suffering. We find ourselves in this hard, meaningless universe with death, with no promise of an afterlife. One of the reasons I've called it The Illusion of Meaning is to contrast it with things like Richard Dawkins' idea of the God Delusion, which is of course a little bit judgmental in its tone. And the reason for that is I want to highlight that the need for meaning is a deeply human thing that we all share. Some people turn to religion. Some people never really think about it. They grow up with that and they're happy with it. But what are we to make of it then if we are atheistic in our persuasion like I am? Well, I would then recognise that my need for a bigger answer, and I mean it's what's driven me to be a scientist as well, to ask the big questions. I think it's the same driving force behind Richard Dawkins, as it is for a religious person. Of course, the conclusions are different. Sometimes people try too hard to compromise both. The way that I come to see this now is that there are conflicts between religion and science, because a lot of the time religion does make truth claims about the universe. As Richard Dawkins says, a universe created by a God is a different prospect from one that's not. So in itself is kind of a truth claim. It's a metaphysical claim. It becomes a scientific claim. So ultimately, there is overlap. Stephen Jay Gould, the evolutionary biologist, tried to give a term called non-overlapping magisteria. And he was trying to say that, religion deals with a different aspect of reality from science. Now, that would be great if it were so simple, but there is conflict. So how do I resolve that personally? Well, I think it's the bit that people didn't like about the God Delusion, or a lot of people didn't like, which was, yes, we should challenge aspects of religion when they're trying to bring unscientific religious ideas into the school classroom, which does happen and still happens. But, so we have to challenge that. There's no getting around that. We'd love to say, oh, each to their own. It's not as simple as that. But what I think the illusion of meaning allows me to do is it allows me to recognize the humanity of someone who believes in God, while also being perfectly clear that I am an atheist. I've got friends who are religious, and I genuinely listen and try and understand their faith from their perspective, what it gives them, what it means to them. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, to connect with other people. That's obviously the bit that Richard Dawkins struggles with. But I don't need to then give any credit at all to creation science or intelligent design. If it's merited one day, if something shows something, then of course you would have to make acknowledgements. But up until then, we don't see that to be the case, and we don't have to treat the ideas with respect. But I think we should treat the people as far as possible with respect. So what does meaning actually look like then for an atheist? Cannot turn to God. It doesn't fit with how they see the universe around them. Well, so we are meaning-seeking creatures, or meaning-making creatures. We understand that discomfort we feel in the midst of a vast, dark cosmos. One of the things about existential philosophy is, at that time in the 20th century, science was exploring the cosmos in greater depth and appreciating the vastness of it, and also the darkness of it, the concept of the vacuum of space, a nothingness. So we were confronted with this chasm, this void, and that's the kind of language you'll see a lot in existential philosophy. And then they posit that there is no meaning, at least no grand narrative. But the meaning was always here. Where should we look for meaning? Well, we should look for meaning in our human experience. As the existential philosophers made perfectly clear, including also Richard Dawkins, Camus, and others, we have the freedom to make our own meaning in life. Now that comes with it a huge responsibility, because then you start to see that some things in life add meaning and some things detract. So if you think about the country where you live and the politics that are there, are they bringing meaning to people's lives or detracting from it? You see, there's a responsibility that comes. There is no preordained truth or path, but there are better paths and worse paths. And we can talk about that as well. We're moving into moral nihilism there and ethics. We'll put that to the side for now. But everything that a human being enjoys, everything that lights them up, that they respond positively to, is here on Earth, because this is the environment to which we have adapted. So everything can be found here that we could ever need or want. Although we do have to confront the truth that death is inevitable, we are mortal creatures. And again, one of the things that I take exception to with Richard Dawkins is he probably, by adopting an overtly defensive position on the question of God or no God, doesn't make some of the clearer concessions that he needs to about just how difficult life is. And I love the Buddhist perspectives on this, that life is suffering, that these things are inevitable. So it's not about trying to change that. It's not about trying to aim for something impossible. It's about sitting with that and accepting reality as it is. And that's the other thing. At the end of the day, sometimes scientific perspectives, by being hyper sort of rational or impersonal, overlook just how important the human experience is. For all of us, that's all there is. It's just our own experience, things arising in consciousness, thoughts passing, and experiences, things happening around us. We want that experience to be as positive as possible for as many people as possible. Humans have the opportunity and the terrifying responsibility, as Sartre would say, to choose those meanings. The truth is, you don't look to the vacuum of space to find the meaning of life. You look here on Earth. Thank you for watching, especially if you got this far. Please do check out the article. It goes into a lot more detail. There's an audio narration as well if you prefer to listen. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. This community here, I know it's just a YouTube channel, but the people that join and subscribe, I don't want that to just be other scientists and other atheists, philosophers, theologians, people who do believe in God, all different types of gods. I want you to feel comfortable here. And hopefully in the comment sections, if there are arguments and debates and disagreements, that you can respect the human, but you can challenge the ideas. That's the thought anyway. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching.